Next, we'll hear from Tom Tiffany. We have 3 minutes on your timer. Can you please state your name before so that we can start your timer? Tom, can you please unmute yourself real quick?
Unmute. Can you hear me
There we
now?
go. We can hear you. Your timer will start now. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much to the Corps of Engineers for putting on this hearing today. And I'm asking the Corps to promptly approve this permit for Enbridge to complete the reroute of Line 5. Line 5 is one of the most important pipeline segments in all of America, serving the upper Midwest with a variety of fuels. And as the years have went by here over the last 5 years, I think that its critical importance is emphasized more and more. If we are going to be a prosperous America, we have to have the infrastructure that is going to be able to deliver affordable, reliable energy to America, including to all of us in the upper Midwest. So first of all, I'd like to emphasize that Enbridge has went above and beyond in regards to meeting the safety standards, the environmental standards that have been put before them. Section 401, the water quality certification, had 200 conditions on it by the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. My understanding is that Enbridge has met all of them. And the reroute started primarily because the Bad River Tribe asked for the pipeline to no longer go across their reservation. Enbridge respectfully said, we are going to try to meet that condition for you. And they followed through diligently and were able to get that reroute done. And great credit to the company working as hard as they could and accomplishing that goal to meet the ask of the Bad River Tribe. So the project has been thoroughly reviewed. The last 5 years has been a very, at minimum, diligent process that the pipeline company has went through to be able to meet all the conditions that are out there, and I believe that they have done that. They are making this a reinforcing safety of the pipeline, creating jobs for Wisconsin and America, but most importantly, providing affordable, reliable energy. And if the pipeline is not able to be completed, and for some reason it ends up being decommissioned, remember what we're going to have. The stats I show is 2,100 trucks a day leaving Superior is what's going to happen. I don't think the state of Wisconsin wants to turn US Highway 2 into a four-lane or six-lane highway to be able to handle all those trucks that would run across Highway 2 and plus all the carbon dioxide that would be given off as a result of it. So this is all about energy security. It is about job security, and it is about national security. Thank you, Enbridge, for doing a thorough job. And once again, I hope the Army Corps of Engineers will expeditiously move this permit along so we can continue to have reliable, affordable energy in the upper Midwest and in America. Thank
Thank you for your statement. There are no more speakers registered to make verbal statements at this time. The hearing will conclude at 7 p.m. Central Time to accommodate for the public. In the event more speakers register to make more verbal statements, you will be allowed to then. Thank you. It looks like we have Don Goodwin here. Don, can you please unmute your microphone and state your name before we begin the timer? Don, can you please unmute your microphone and state your name before we begin the timer? Don, we're going to ask one more time. Can you please unmute your microphone and state your name?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. And your time will start now.
Thank you. Buju gagige ashik indigenous cause. Gawaba biganikag and Dunjaba. My name is Everlasting Wind, and I'm from White Earth. I'm here to oppose the reroute project. I'm in support of Bad River. I am from Minnesota. I am a, well, what would you say? I'm struggling after line 3. I see the damage that Enbridge caused in our homelands, 1855 treaty territory, and it sickens me. I seen the devastation that came from the frack outs, witnessed them firsthand. Enbridge workers, contractors, specifically Michaels, came into our territory. We were invaded. That's how I feel. So now when I see big white trucks, it causes PTSD. When I think of my mother who passed away during line 3 construction, I get PTSD because I was waiting for the time to spend with her. Now she's gone. Line 3 construction is over, and I have time to spend with my mother, and she is gone. This is how you've affected people where you do your projects. I've seen from the LiDAR cameras that you cannot avoid disturbing Bad River's water quality. It's apparent. And I want you to remember this as you're going forward. The underground is sacred. That is a sacred place. You are disrupting that. You will not be able to do construction without disrupting the sacred underground where our water comes from. Miigwech.
Thank you for your statement. There are no more speakers registered to make verbal statements at this time. The hearing will conclude at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time to accommodate the public. In the event more speakers registered to make verbal statements, you can do so then. Just a reminder, if anybody wants to make any statements, please register using the link above. That way we can add you in. Anybody raising your hands, please remember the only way to make verbal statements is to register. The chat is disabled here by design, so you can please use the link shown right now. We have a new speaker. We're going to be welcoming Dan Gaither. Please unmute your microphone. Please unmute your microphone and state your name before we begin the timer.
Hey, I'd just like to be clear. I've registered a couple of times as myself and no one was calling on me, so I registered as my husband, but this is Jamie Gaither. Jamie Indigenikas, Nawin Imbagi Nang Indunjba, Nawakwanda Nungumbe Shogawa Babikanakat. My name is Jamie Gaither. I live here near White Earth Reservation, just next to the Line 393 pipeline project that was installed in 2021. You know, we heard that Line 3 was the most studied pipeline project in history and that was going to prevent any permanent damages and that conditions were made by the state agencies to protect the land. Yet post Line 3, we see how promises made by both Enbridge and the state were insufficient. We have multiple HDD releases of contaminants into the ground, as was mentioned earlier in this hearing. And we have 4 admitted breaches, yet flyovers done of the Line 393 route in November of 2021 showed upwards of 45 aquifer breaches along the state route, the corridor through this state. We have heard, and I get that the Enbridge workers do care and they want to do their best, but we have seen evidence provided, and thank you so much to the Bad River Band for all of the tremendous testimony that you've given regarding the facts that BMPs, as we saw in Minnesota, and as was presented with multiple evidence from the band, will not protect water quality. While it would state that the applicant will say conditions will protect, just one of these 241 conditions failing means that damages will occur. And we can see still here in Minnesota, 10 miles from my house, Walker Brook, where with one of the final installations of a water crossing done for the project, it's still unremediated because Enbridge went in without a thorough understanding of the land. As we see, the band has showed us with their evidence, there are 233% more water interconnectivities than are recognized by either the applicant or the USGS or the state. So when you're not dealing with all of the information, when you're only looking at things from a high level, you don't see these issues. Now we see that we have wishful promises, even with a more robust EIS, even with more admissions by Enbridge of the fact that they are going to have troubles and the places where they're going to have troubles, we still see insufficient evidence. We see zero evidence about the temperature of their pipeline. And yet at Wadukawad Amikwag, which you can look up, those who help Beaver, Google us, we have a YouTube site and a website which thoroughly documents some of the damages that we're seeing post-construction here on Line 393. These are wishful promises that Enbridge hopes to provide and the state hopes to be able to condition. But the fact is these damages will occur as they did in Minnesota, and we cannot avoid them. Please support the band and deny this permit. Miigwech.
Thank you for your statement. There are no more speakers registered to make verbal statements at this time. The hearing will conclude at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time to accommodate the public. In the event more speakers registered to make verbal statements, they can do so then. Next, we'll be hearing from Taisha Kilsanami. Please unmute your microphone and state your name before we begin the timer. Taisha, can you please unmute your microphone and turn off your camera? We are not doing any cameras at this moment.
Is that, did I do it right?
Yes, we can hear you. Your time starts now.
Buju, Dawiki Skishi Gokwe, Nindishnakas, Nagachuanang, and Dunjiba, Megazaki, Megazidodum. My name is Tasha Kilsenemy of Whitebird Services, formerly known as Tasia Martineau of Camp Migazi. I led a environmental resistance camp in opposition of the Enbridge Line 393 project. And I worked the Enbridge Line 3 and Line 4 decommission. I just wanted to speak to, the efforts that Enbridge and their subcontractors have gone to help protect our environment. I'm a local tribal member here on the Fond du Lac Reservation. I did protest the Line 3 project in the beginning because I believed that the environmental hazards as well as the risk to our community was greater than the project itself. While working for the Line 3 and Line 4 project removal, I learned that I was misinformed about a lot of things. It goes to great lengths to educate themselves continuously on how to better show up in the community as a support, as a partner, as well as the subcontractors that work alongside them. I had an amazing opportunity to work on a crew with Whitebird Services, which were all Indigenous women. Many of these people who are working this project, not only are we from this area, but we believe we're part of the land itself. I think that that's very important, that Enbridge is willing to hire people who are from here and have great connections to these lands, because nobody cares more about the rice and the water and all of the plants and animals who live here than those of us who are from here. It was a really amazing opportunity to educate myself more on, land restoration, what happens when a pipeline goes in, what happens when you go in and remove a pipeline. And those are things that I had not known previously. I care very much about the environment. I care very deeply about, our water, our wild rice especially. I go ricing and netting every year. It's one of the ways I provide for my 4 children. But the other way I provide for my children is working these projects. And I hope that, the Army Corps of Engineers puts that into consideration while making their decision about those of us who are from these lands, who rely on the land itself and these projects that come through to help provide for our children. Thank you.
Thank you for your statement. Next, we have Winona Ford. Can you please unmute your microphone and state your name before we start the timer?
Can you hear me? Can you hear
Yes, we
me?
can. Your time starts now.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Your time starts
Hello?
now.
Okay. One one second, please. Abuju, Winona Zinakaj, Mapodondem, Muskinjibi and Dunjaba, understand by Quay and Dow. I'm a Bad River tribal member. I lived around here most of my life, and I wanted to share my reasons on why I support this project. I'm looking forward to working to change my life in a positive way by building my career. I support Line 5 and looking forward to working on it. This will benefit our community by providing jobs that are closer to home. And I've been working with Enbridge, and they've been training me, and I've gained a lot of tools, and not only for myself, but to better my community. And I also rice and hunt on my land, so I'm big on environment, and I support this line. Thank you for your time.
You still have time on. Are you done speaking? Thank you for your statement. There are no more speakers registered to make verbal statements at this time. The hearing will conclude at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time to accommodate the public. In the event more speakers registered to make verbal statements, we will have those after they've registered. Okay, we have some new people registered to speak. Next, we're going to be hearing from Benjamin Bishop. Please unmute your microphone and state your name before we begin the timer. It looks like Benjamin is not here. We're going to be moving on to Liana Goose. Please state your name and unmute your microphone in the opposite order before we begin the timer. It looks like they are not here as well. We are going to be going over some of the other names that were missed earlier, just in case. We have Dan Olson. If you are here, please unmute your microphone and state your name before we begin the timer. Okay, moving on, we have Jill Hartlev. If you are here, please unmute your microphone and state your name before we begin the timer. Moving on, we have Martin Stoner. If you are here, please unmute your microphone and state your name before we begin the timer. Let's take a look. Next, we have James Crittenden. If you are here, please unmute your microphone and state your name before we begin the timer. Moving on, we have Melanie Connors. If you are in the room, please unmute your microphone and state your name before we begin the timer. Okay, and finally we have Josh Whitebird. If you are here, please unmute your microphone and state your name before we begin the timer. It looks like there are no more speakers registered to make verbal statements at this time. The hearing will conclude at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time to accommodate the public, in the event more speakers register to make more verbal statements. All right, it looks like we have another speaker here. Next, we'll be hearing from Josh Whitebird. Can you please unmute your microphone and state your name before we begin the timer?
Ready?
Yes, sir, we hear you. Can you turn yourself up a tiny bit?
Is that better? How about now?
You're a little bit low. Maybe you can get closer to the microphone.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's fine. Your time starts now.
My name is Josh Whitebird. I'm a Fond du Lac tribal member. I'm calling in today in support for Line 5. I have, for the last couple decades, I've had a career in natural resources. I've worked with our cultural activities. I've done them, worked with them. I'm also a wildland firefighter, doing that for several years now also. My family owns a small construction business out of Fond du Lac, and we have worked on Enbridge projects. And I'd like to talk today about, I understand people's concerns for these projects, but what people often forget to talk about is in a lot of our cultures, we don't acknowledge the fact that, yes, Monoman's a part of it, deer, moose, sugar bush, and other stuff, berries, but we don't acknowledge that energy is also a part of our culture. And it's not just ours, it's everybody's culture. And we want to make sure that these projects are done in a professional manner. And I think they are. I believe they are. more knowledge, the better. And I think a lot of the opposition just doesn't want to know the facts and doesn't want to take the time to learn them. I was part of that at one time. I'm not any longer, but I do support these projects and I understand the need for them. As far as the economic part of it, I don't think people understand what this really truly does for people that don't have an opportunity that get one from a project like this or similar to it. It's life changing. And, I've seen it. We've been a part of it. I understand the water protectors and the protesters. I understand their point of view too. But at the same time, like, their ideologies, they only accept one way, right? And I think moving forward, we just got to do better and have these conversations, whether we like them or not. But at the end of the day, everything we does requires energy, and whether it's critical minerals or oil, it's a part of everything we do. And that's why these projects are here. If this line wasn't important, I do believe the United States government would have canceled it, but they haven't. So we just got to have a better understanding, and we got to monitor things and make sure that the risks are mitigated and we take care of the land. Thank you.
Thank you for your statement. Next, we will hear from Dan Olson. Please unmute your microphone and state your name before we begin the timer. It looks like Dan is not here. We will be moving on to Jill Hartliv. If you're here, please unmute your microphone and state your name before we begin the timer. It looks like Jill is not here. We are going to be moving on to Martin Stoner. Please unmute your microphone and state your name before we begin the timer. Up next, we have Melanie Connors. If you are here, please unmute your microphone and state your name before we begin the timer. Moving on, we have James Crittenden. If you are here, please unmute your microphone and state your name before we begin the timer. Coming up next, we have Benjamin Bishop. If you are here, please unmute your microphone and state your name before we begin the timer. And finally, we have Liana Goose. If you are here, please unmute your microphone and state your name before we begin the timer. There are no more speakers registered to make verbal statements at this time. The hearing will conclude at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. To accommodate the public, in the event more speakers register to make verbal statements. As a quick note, please make sure that when you register to speak, you check the box that states that you wish to speak, and when you log in to Teams, please make sure to put your full name that you use to register as your username. If you are in need of changing your name, you will have to log out of Teams and re-log back in, and that should help you do that. Thank you so much. All right, everybody, it looks like we have another speaker coming up. Liana Goose, can you please unmute your microphone and state your name before we start the timer?
So Buju, can you guys hear me?
We can hear you. Your time starts now.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So Buju, my relatives, my name is Leanna Goose. I am from Leech Lake. I thank you for the opportunity to speak today. Before we begin, I just want to ground this comment in a basic scientific truth. Water is the basis of all life. We all come from water. We all depend on water. And the water contained in the Great Lakes is 20% of the world's surface fresh water, and it is sacred. It's not just a resource, it is a life giver, a relative, and it must be protected and respected. We are here today because that water and the people who depend on it are under threat. The Band River Band has established water quality standards to protect their health, their lands, and their way of life. These are sovereign standards grounded in science, law, and culture. Any pipeline proposal that threatens those standards is a direct threat to the Bad River people and to all of us who live in this interconnected ecosystem. And I just want to be clear, if this pipeline were to leak, and pipelines do leak, it would violate Bad River's water quality standards. That's not hypothetical, and that's not fear mongering. That is a predictable outcome based on history. Just look at Keystone XL pipeline, which ruptured and spilled hundreds of thousands of gallons of oil, even though it was built only recently with supposed modern safeguards. And it's not the only one. Pipelines fail. It's a matter of when, not if. And this brings me to free, prior, and informed consent. Under the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, which is endorsed by the US, tribes have the right to give or withhold consent to projects that affect their lands, waters, and people, not just to be consulted, and not just to be heard and ignored. Consent. That means they should have the right to reject these projects. And that also means that decisions about projects like this pipeline must be made with tribes, not around them, before the project begins, not once the permits are signed, with full, accurate information, not biased corporate promises. That is the standard that should be followed and met here. So I stand today with Bad River, and I stand with the water, and I ask that you at the Army Corps of Engineers do the same thing, honor Indigenous sovereignty, uphold water protections, respect free, prior, and informed consent. Miigwech for the time today. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your statement. Coming up next, we have Ann Chartier. If you can please unmute your microphone and state your name before we start your timer. Okay, moving on, we're going to be going over our list once again. We have Dan Olson. If you are here, please unmute your microphone and state your name before we begin the timer. Moving on, we have Jill Hartley. If you can please unmute your microphone and state your name before we begin the timer. Okay, next we have Martin Stoner. If you are here, please unmute your microphone and state your name so we can begin the timer. Next we have Melanie Connors. If you are here, can you please unmute your microphone and state your name? Once again, Melanie Connors, if you are here, please unmute your microphone and state your name so we can begin the timer. Okay, moving on, we have James Crittenden. If you are here, please state your name so we can begin the timer. Once again, James, if you are here, can you please state your name, unmute your microphone first, and that way we can begin your timer. Okay, moving on to Benjamin Bishop. If you are here, please unmute your microphone and state your name so we can begin the timer. One more call for Benjamin Bishop. If you are here, please state your name by unmuting your microphone so that we can begin your timer. Okay, moving on back to Benjamin Bishop. If you are here, please state your name by unmuting your microphone so we can begin the timer. One more call for Benjamin Bishop. You are up next. Please unmute your microphone, state your name so we can begin the timer. One last call for any chartier. If you are here, please state your name by unmuting your microphone. One more call for any chartier. Okay, it seems that there are no more speakers registered to make verbal statements at this time. The hearing will conclude at 7 p.m. Central Daylight Time. To ensure we accommodate the public in the event more speakers register to make a verbal statement. Keep in mind that if you are registering to make a verbal statement, to use the same name that you registered as, that your username is, and to make sure that you click the box that says you wish to speak. If you do not click the box, we will not know and your name will not come up into our system. Thank you. Just a quick reminder, when you are registering, make sure to click the box that states that you wish to speak. If you do not, your name will not show up on our list and we will not be able to call you. This is only people registered to speak may speak in this meeting. Thank you so much. Just a quick reminder for anybody that missed it. If you are registering to speak for the 3-minute time period, you have to make sure to click the box that states you wish to speak. If you register and do not click the box, we will not see your name in our system and you will not be given a chance to speak. So if you have done so and you haven't been called yet, please re-register and check the box. Thank you. Okay, it looks like we have another speaker. We are now calling Rachel Johnson to deliver your verbal statement. Please unmute your microphone and say your name before we begin your timer.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you. Your time starts now.
Wonderful. Well, good evening. My name is Rachel Johnson. I'm the president and CEO of APEX, which stands for Area Partnership for Economic Expansion. And I thank you for the opportunity to provide comments this evening. APEX is a private sector-led nonprofit organization established to promote sustainable growth in northeastern Minnesota and northwestern Wisconsin, including the Line 5 Relocation Project area. APEX investor members represent nearly 100 diverse companies and organizations, all with a vested interest in sustainable, prosperous communities. It's my understanding that the Corps and the Wisconsin DNR permitting records verify that construction of the Line 5 segment relocation project will protect natural and cultural resources, including the quality of the Bad River Band's waters, aquatic resources, and wetlands. Given the distance between construction activities and reservation waters and the project data compiled to date, the project will not result in any measurable impact to water quality within the Band River Reservation. Any impacts of construction, including the release of sediment, will be confined to the construction corridor. The project's a typical linear construction project, and they'll be implementing it adhering to the best management practices, which includes extensive construction plans to control erosion, like silt fencing, slope and trench breakers, erosion control blankets, and quick reseeding to minimize any potential downstream impacts. The project's impacts are also temporary. Each crossing will be complete within a matter of days. The minimal impacts of this project were also confirmed by the 231 conditions that the Wisconsin DNR included in its Section 401 water quality certification. These conditions will protect state water standards during construction by mandating Enbridge adhere to erosion and sediment control and equipment use, fish spawning protections, wetland protections, invasive species prevention, safety watering, restoration planning, independent environmental monitoring, and water quality monitoring in waterways. I believe this project can be relocated and constructed within the permitting requirements that exist to protect our environment. A key factor for our region's ability to grow and advance economically is to have affordable and accessible energy sources, energy that comes in the form of gas and diesel and natural gas and propane, which are used by a vast majority of our society. Without this affordable and accessible energy, local economies, families, and businesses of all sizes will unnecessarily suffer. I thank you again for the opportunity to comment on this important project that has regional implications. Thank you.
Thank you for your statement. Next, we'll be hearing from Dan Olson. Please unmute your microphone and state your name before we begin the timer. Okay, moving on, we will have Jill Hartlev. Please unmute your microphone and state your name before we begin the timer. Moving forward, we have Martin Stoner. If you can please unmute your microphone and state your name before we begin the timer. Moving on, we have Melanie Connors. If you can please unmute your microphone and state your name before we begin the timer. Next, we have James Crittenden. If you can please unmute your microphone and state your name before we begin the timer. Up next, we have Benjamin Bishop. If you can please state your name by unmuting your microphone before we begin the timer. And finally, we have Annie Chatir. If you could please unmute your microphone and state your name before we begin the timer. Okay, there are no more speakers registered to make a verbal statement at this time. The hearing will conclude at 7 p.m. Central Daylight Time to ensure we accommodate the public in the event more speakers register to make a verbal statement. Keep in mind that if you are registered and you don't see your name being called up, you might not have checked the box to make sure that you are registering as a speaker. Please re-register and check the box to make sure that we see you when you want to speak. Thank you, and we'll be back soon. Okay, now we're going to be calling Jill Hartlev to deliver their verbal statement. Please unmute your microphone before we begin the timer and state your name.
Hello, am I unmuted?
Yes, you are, and your time starts now.
Okay. My name's Jill Hartliv. I am a Bad River tribal member, and I have taken upon myself to learn about Enbridge as a company, their safety standards, some of the things that they've been through. They totally acknowledge that they've had some things happen in the past, but they've also done a lot of what I would call restoration and reconciliation. They've adopted a program that's called IRAP, Indigenous Reconciliation Action Plan, acknowledging that they need to strengthen and have relationships with tribal people, tribal lands, not only the ones that they're on, but the ones that they're around. So they do community support, community engagement. It's just been a big learning curve for me. In the beginning, I thought Enbridge was a oil company. I did not know the difference between pipeline transfer company and oil company. And in my opinion, I feel like they came to our area to make the transportation safer, coming off of rail and off of the lakes when it was transported by ships. So for them to have an opportunity to make it safer on the reservation and just upgrade what's already there is, kind of sad to me. But the things that I have learned is, yes, there's been some invasive species in our area, whether it's on the reservation or ceded territory. I do know that they own property that is down by the proposed reroute, and that for the past 5 years, they have voluntarily removed garlic mustard invasive species from that property. So to kind of contribute to making the environment safer. Also, it's just a lot of it gives me a lot of support. I give them a lot of support because they have found ways to give opportunities to tribal members, whether it's training, maybe not to necessarily work on their pipeline, but to have the skills to be laborers, Not everybody gets to go to university, so they provide those opportunities. And as far as a community investment, and I support the company. Miigwech.
Thank you for your statement. We are now going to be calling past speakers that were called that maybe missed their mark. We have Dan Olson. Dan Olson, if you are here, can you please unmute your microphone and state your name before the timer starts? Okay, moving on, we have Martin Stoner. Martin Stoner, if you are here, please unmute your microphone and state your name before the timer starts. Melanie Connors. If Melanie Connors is in the room, please unmute your microphone and state your name before the timer starts. James Crittenden or Crittenden. James Crittenden, if you are here, please unmute your microphone and state your name before the timer starts. Next, we have Benjamin Bishop. Benjamin Bishop, can you please unmute your microphone and state your name before the timer starts? Anne Shatir, if you can please state your name and unmute your microphone before the timer starts. Anne Shatir. Okay, there are no more speakers registered to make a verbal statement at this time. The hearing will conclude at 7 p.m. Central Daylight Time to ensure we accommodate the public. In the event more speakers register to make verbal statements, they can do so then. As a quick reminder, if you have registered to make a statement but you don't see your name being called, you may have forgotten or missed the box checking stating that you wish to make a verbal statement. Please re-register and check that box so that we can see you on our list and we can call you then. Thank you. Okay, it looks like we have another speaker here registered. Can we get Stephanie Svahir or Stephanie Svahar up, please? Please unmute your microphone and state your name before the timer begins.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Spahar.
Svahar. Hello, Stephanie. Can you give us a second? Your time starts now.
Sure. I'm calling to say that I do not wish Line 5 to be given a permit. I'm against it for a number of reasons. One of those reasons is I believe it violates the sovereignty of the Bad River Band in Wisconsin. I think that they've been pretty clear that they do not want this pipeline in their traditional lands, and the reroute, even though it goes around the reservation, will still violate that. I also think there are a lot of environmental damage reasons that this reroute should not be done. I think that it's pretty clear that Enbridge has a poor track record when it comes, poor is putting it lightly, when it comes to environmental safety and damage. And they've caused a lot of damage elsewhere, and I see no reason why this would not continue with this reroute. I think it endangers a lot of really essential and important natural resources, water, wild rice beds, fisheries, and I think that those things are precious and need to be protected. And then finally, I think that this is clearly a time when we do not need to be investing in new fossil fuel infrastructure or an infrastructure that will continue our dependence on fossil fuels into the future, and that's what this pipeline will do. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you for your statement. Up next, we have Dan Olson. If you are here, Dan Olson, please unmute your microphone and state your name so we can begin the timer. Martin Stoner. We are calling Martin Stoner. If you are here, please unmute your microphone and state your name so we can begin the timer. Up next, we have Melanie Connors. Melanie Connors, if you are here, can you please unmute your microphone and state your name so that we can begin the timer? James Crittenden. If James Crittenden is here, can you please unmute your microphone and state your name so we can begin the timer? Benjamin Bishop. Benjamin Bishop, if you are here, can you please unmute your microphone and state your name so we can begin the timer? And finally, we have Ann Shatir. If Ann Shatir is here, can you please state your name so we can begin the timer? It looks like there are no more speakers registered to make verbal statements at this time. The hearing will conclude at 7 p.m. Central Daylight Time to ensure we accommodate the public. In the event more speakers registered to make verbal statements, they can do so then. Keep in mind that if you are registering, make sure to click the box that states that you wish to make a verbal statement. That way we get a notification on our list and we are able to call you. If you have registered and you have not been called yet, please ensure that you have clicked the box or ensure that you are using the name you used when you registered. If you're not sure of either, I recommend doing both and logging out and logging back in and recreating your username. Thank you. For your time, your input, and your cooperation throughout today's hearing. And now I'm going to be turning the meeting over to the presiding officer, Commander Rudd.
Moderator, can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
Great, thanks. I appreciate everyone's participation. We'll carefully consider all statements provided as part of our decision under the 401(a)(2) of the Clean Water Act. I remind everyone that written statements will be provided equal weight in our decision and will be accepted through June 13th of this year. Please reference the hearing public notice for additional information on how to provide written statements. This hearing is officially closed. Thank you and have a good night.